That night, my son looked me in the eyes and said the words no mother should ever hear. Get out, Mom. Jessica doesn't want you here. The music stopped. 200 guests fell silent. And in that silence, I realized some words don't just break your heart, they carve a scar that never heals. My name is Margaret Cole, though everyone in town calls me Maggie. I'm 57 years old, and this is the story of how my son's wedding destroyed my family and, somehow, saved my life. The day had been planned for months. The ranch garden shimmered under strings of white lights. The band had been playing since sunset. Tables were draped in linen cloths I'd hand-stitched myself through sleepless nights, each thread carrying a mother's love and pride. It was supposed to be perfect. My only son, Daniel, was marrying Jessica Reed, that polished city girl with honey blonde hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. I wore the royal blue dress my mother had worn at her own wedding. I'd kept it safe all these years, waiting for this moment, the day I'd watch my son start a new life. I styled my hair in an elegant bun, slipped on my mother's pearl earrings, and whispered to myself, "You did good, Maggie. You raised him right." When I arrived at the reception hall, Jessica's expression stiffened. She whispered something into Daniel's ear, and within seconds, I saw his jaw tighten, that same look he had as a boy when he'd done something wrong but couldn't admit it. "Mom," he began quietly, "Jessica thinks your dress might be a bit too much. It's stealing her spotlight." I froze, my lips trembled, but I forced a smile. "It's fine, sweetheart. I can change if it makes her more comfortable." But Daniel shook his head, his voice turning sharp. "No, Mom, it's better if you just leave." At first, I thought he was joking, but his eyes didn't waver. Around us, laughter and clinking glasses filled the room. Only I knew my world was cracking. "Leave," I repeated. "Jessica's nervous. She says you make her tense. She thinks you've always judged her." I swallowed hard, feeling the music fade into a distant hum. "Daniel, I organized this wedding. I paid for half of it. And that gives you the right to ruin her day?" He snapped, loud enough for everyone to hear. The crowd fell silent. 200 faces turned toward us. And then he said it again, clear as day. "Get out, Mom. Jessica doesn't want you here." I felt something inside me shatter, something deep and sacred. But I didn't cry, I didn't beg. I simply nodded, picked up my purse, and walked toward the exit. No one stopped me. No one followed. The cool night air stung my face as I drove home. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, but I refused to break. Hanging around my neck were the ranch keys, the ones my father had given me before he died. The same keys Daniel had been asking about ever since he got engaged. When I reached the ranch, I hung my blue dress in the closet, folded neatly as if the day hadn't ruined it. I sat in the kitchen in silence. The ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, everything felt louder than usual. I didn't sleep that night. But when the phone rang the next morning and I saw Daniel's name flashing on the screen, I already knew the storm wasn't over. I took a deep breath, picked up the call, and whispered, "Hello, son." Sometimes betrayal doesn't arrive with anger, it arrives with a calm voice asking for the one thing that can destroy you. And I had a feeling Daniel wasn't just calling to apologize, he was calling for the keys. "Mom," Daniel's voice came through the phone, soft, careful, rehearsed. "Can you come to the ranch later? We need to talk." I hesitated. "Talk about what?" He paused, exhaled. "You'll see when you get here." I didn't answer. I hung up, set the phone down, and stared at the half-empty coffee mug in front of me, the same chipped mug I'd used every morning for 20 years. I had made that coffee strong, the way Daniel used to like it when he was a boy, waking up early to help me feed the horses. That memory hit me hard. There was a time when he'd follow me through the barn, boots too big for his feet, trying to look tough. He'd say, "Mom, I can fix the fence," even though the hammer was nearly heavier than him. I'd laugh and tell him, "Not yet, cowboy, you're still my little boy." And he'd answer, puffing his chest, "Not anymore, Mom. I'm the man of the house now." After William died, 15 years ago, Daniel was all I had. We built our life back together piece by piece. We worked the land, fixed the fences, kept the cattle alive when the drought nearly killed us. The ranch wasn't just home, it was our history, our last connection to 4 generations of Coles. When Daniel finished college, he came home saying, "Mom, my place is here with you." And for a while, he meant it. We spent evenings on the porch, drinking coffee and watching the sun set behind the cottonwoods. He'd say, "One day my kids are gonna grow up here. They'll ride these same horses, run through this dirt barefoot just like I did." I'd smile, pretending not to tear up. "I hope so, sweetheart." But everything changed the day he met Jessica Reed. She wasn't from here, she was from Boston, worked in business consulting. Always had that city shine about her, confident, ambitious, and just cold enough to make you feel small. Daniel met her at a networking event in New York. The first time he brought her home, I knew, deep down, she didn't belong on this land. "This is where you live?" she asked, her voice full of polite surprise as she looked around at the old wooden beams and framed family photos. Daniel laughed. "It's not much, but it's ours." She smiled, thin and quick. "It's quaint." That word stung more than it should have. Quaint, like our lives were something she could photograph, admire, and move past. After that visit, Daniel changed. He started coming home late from trips. He stopped joining me on the porch. He began talking about modernizing the ranch, turning it into a venue for weddings and events, something profitable. "Mom," he said one night, "Jessica thinks we could earn a lot if we renovated. It's a smart move." I looked at him. "This isn't a business, Daniel, it's our home." "It can be both, Mom. We have to be realistic." That word again. Realistic, the same word people use when they're about to let go of what really matters. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, clutching the keys around my neck. My father's voice echoed in my memory. "Maggie, this land is your inheritance. Don't let anyone take it from you, not even your own blood." Back then, I didn't understand why he'd said that. Now I did. When the phone rang again later that morning, I didn't want to answer, but I did. Daniel's voice sounded different, detached. "Mom, Jessica and I need the ranch keys. We want to make some updates before moving in. Just small things, remodeling, replacing the old furniture." Those pieces weren't just furniture. My great-grandfather built them by hand. I gripped the phone tighter. "The ranch doesn't need updates, Daniel. It needs respect." He sighed heavily. "Mom, please, yesterday was enough drama. Let's not do this again." "Drama?" I repeated, my voice trembling. "You threw me out of your wedding, Daniel, and I'm the one making drama?" There was silence, a long one. Then he said coldly, "Jessica's right. You can't live in the past forever, Mom." When a child starts repeating someone else's words, it means the battle for their heart has already begun. And I wasn't just fighting my son anymore, I was fighting Jessica Reed. "Jessica's right." Those two words hung in the air like smoke, heavy and suffocating. He'd never said that before. When he was a boy, my opinion was gospel to him. Now, every sentence came from her mouth, not his. I tried to steady my voice. "When are you coming home, Daniel?" He hesitated. "That's the thing, Mom. Jessica and I aren't moving back to the ranch. We'll stay in the city for now, closer to her job. It's just more practical." Practical, another word that didn't belong in our vocabulary. "So," I asked quietly, "why do you need the keys if you're not moving in?" There was a pause, then muffled whispers in the background. Jessica's voice. "We just want to take a look around," he said finally. "Make some changes, freshen the place up, paint the walls, replace the furniture, modernize it." I almost laughed, modernize. That word had started to sound like a race. "Those walls," I said, "were built by your great-grandfather. That furniture was made from oak trees that grew on this very land." "Mom, please don't start," he muttered. "Yesterday was emotional enough." "Emotional?" I repeated. "Daniel, you humiliated me in front of 200 people on your wedding day, and now you want my keys?" Silence. Then the kind that hurts more than shouting. Finally, he said, "It's not just your house, Mom. Dad left half of it to me." Ah, there it was, the truth crawling out at last. He was right, in a way. Williams will had indeed divided the property, 50% to Daniel, 50 to me. But what my son conveniently forgot was the clause his father added. "As long as Margaret Cole is alive and of sound mind, she will retain full control and administration of the property. Daniel Cole's share shall remain in trust until she determines otherwise." William had always known. He'd seen what greed could do to families. He'd seen how love can turn into leverage. "Daniel," I said softly, "your father trusted me with those keys for a reason." His tone hardened. "Mom, don't be stubborn, it's just a house." "No, Daniel," I whispered, "it's our home." "There's a difference." He sighed, long and tired, the kind that sounds like a goodbye. "You can't keep clinging to the past forever." "You sound just like her," I said before I could stop myself. Another silence. Then in a cold voice he replied, "Maybe that's not a bad thing." He hung up. I sat there for a long time, the phone still in my hand, the dial tone humming in my ear. Outside, the wind had started to rise, shaking the old shutters. The ranch seemed to breathe, the wood groaning, the windows trembling, as if it knew what was coming. I reached for the keys around my neck, heavy and cool against my skin. They weren't just metal, they were history. They'd opened every door in my life, and now, maybe, they were the only thing keeping it from falling apart. That night, I couldn't bring myself to eat. I made a pot of coffee and sat by the kitchen window, staring out into the dark fields. The horses shifted in the stable, the crickets hummed in the grass, and somewhere far away, a coyote cried. I wondered what William would say if he were here. He'd probably smile, that quiet smile of his, and say, Maggie, the land doesn't betray you. People do. The phone didn't ring again that night, but I knew it would. Because when someone starts taking pieces of your heart, they don't stop at one. I thought losing my husband was the worst pain I'd ever feel. I was wrong. The real heartbreak was realizing my son hadn't called to ask for forgiveness. He'd called to plan a takeover. 3 days passed after that call. 3 long, quiet days where the ranch felt like a ghost of itself. I woke up early every morning, brewed 2 cups of coffee out of habit, then poured one down the sink. The house had too much silence for one person. On the fourth morning, I finally gave in to pride's softer cousin, Hope. Maybe Daniel would come home. Maybe we could talk, clear the air, find a way back. So I picked up the phone. Mom, he answered, surprised. Can we talk? I asked. Not over the phone. Come home, Daniel. Bring Jessica. I'll make dinner. He hesitated. I could hear him whispering to her in the background. Jessica's not sure if that's a good idea, he said. Please, I said quietly. Let me make this right. Maybe I haven't been fair to her. The words burned my tongue, but I said them anyway. Finally, he sighed. All right. We'll come tomorrow evening. After he hung up, I just stood there, unsure whether I'd made peace or set a trap for my own heart. But I didn't care. I needed to see him again. The next day, I cleaned like a woman expecting God himself. I dusted every shelf, polished the silver, and laid out the embroidered tablecloth my mother had made for my wedding. I cooked his favorite meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and apple cobbler for dessert, and I put on a beige dress, simple, modest, nothing that could steal the spotlight. At exactly 7 o'clock, headlights swept across the driveway. My heart jumped. I stepped outside, clutching the keys around my neck like a cross. Daniel climbed out first, looking sharp in jeans and a white shirt. But something in his eyes was gone, that warmth that once lit up his face when he smiled. Jessica followed behind him in a wine-colored dress, her hair sleek and perfect, a smile plastered on like fresh paint. Good evening, Mrs. Cole, she said, her tone sugary but hollow. It's Maggie, I replied. Come in. They stepped inside, and Jessica's eyes immediately began scanning the house, not admiring, but assessing. Her gaze lingered on the framed photographs, the furniture, even the old oak staircase. How quaint, she murmured, that word again, the one that made my skin crawl. This house was built by my great-grandfather, I said, forcing a smile. Every beam here has a story. She nodded politely. It definitely has character. We sat at the table. I served the food. Daniel took one bite of the meatloaf and closed his eyes. God, Mom, you still make it better than anyone. I smiled. For the first time in weeks, my heart eased. Jessica, on the other hand, took a single dainty bite. It's good, she said, though I usually avoid too much seasoning. My stomach's sensitive. Would you like something else? I asked, though I knew the answer. No, she said quickly. It's fine. Silence settled over the table. Finally, I broke it. I wanted you both to come because I owe you an apology for the wedding, for everything. Daniel looked up, startled. Jessica blinked, caught off guard. I was unfair to you both, I continued. This is your life now, your marriage. I have to respect that. Jessica's lips parted into a genuine smile. Thank you, Maggie. That means a lot. Daniel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I love you, Mom. For a brief, fragile moment, it felt like family again. But peace has a way of cracking just when you start to believe in it. After dinner, I brought out dessert. Jessica excused herself to the restroom, but she took her phone with her, and she'd been gone too long. Something in my gut twisted. I walked down the hall quietly. The bathroom door was open, empty. Then I noticed a sliver of light coming from William's old study, a room that was always locked. The door was ajar. I pushed it open. Jessica stood there, phone in hand, snapping photos of my late husband's desk, the documents, the locked drawers. Jessica, I said sharply. She jumped, turning around too quickly. Oh, Maggie, you startled me. Her voice was sweet, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. I was just admiring the room. It's so vintage. The door was locked, I said. It was open, she replied too quickly. I didn't think you'd mind. I stared at her for a long second, long enough for the air between us to freeze. Then I simply said, dinner's getting cold. She followed me back to the dining room, pretending nothing had happened. But I could feel it, that invisible shift in the air, the first tremor before an earthquake. That night, as they drove away, I went back to William's study. The papers were slightly moved, just enough for me to know one thing for certain. Jessica Reed wasn't just looking for family history. She was looking for something worth stealing. Sleep didn't come that night. I sat in William's study long after Daniel and Jessica's car disappeared down the dirt road, the headlights fading into black. The room smelled like old books, pipe tobacco, and ghosts. On the desk, the papers were almost exactly where William had left them, almost. He was meticulous in his order. He'd fold every document perfectly, tuck each corner beneath the other. But tonight, one file was off by a single inch. That was all it took. I went through the drawers, the property deeds, the old ranch titles, the will, everything seemed in place. Except for one thing, the yellow envelope, it was gone. William had given me that envelope before he died, pressing it into my hands like a priest offering a prayer. Maggie, he said, only open this if someone ever tries to take the ranch from you. For years, I'd kept it hidden in his desk, unopened, a secret promise between us. And now it had vanished. I searched everywhere, drawers, bookshelves, behind frames, nothing. A cold panic rose inside me. Who else knew about it? Only William, me, and maybe our lawyer, Mr. Harper. I spent the rest of the night pacing. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. I was driving into town. Mr. Harper's office sat at the edge of Main Street, an old brick building that smelled of paper, ink, and pipe smoke. He'd been our family lawyer for over 30 years, a man of integrity and habit, who always wore a pressed gray suit and carried a fountain pen like a badge of honor. When I walked in, he looked up over his glasses. "Mrs. Cole," he said warmly, "what a surprise, I was just about to call you." My stomach tightened. "Call me? Why?" He gestured toward the chair. "Please sit down. Would you like some coffee?" I shook my head. "Just tell me what's going on." He sighed and leaned back, his chair creaking. "I received a rather strange phone call yesterday from your daughter-in-law." The room tilted slightly. "Jessica?" "Yes. She said you'd asked her to contact me, that you wanted to review your husband's will, and that there were concerns about how the property was divided." I felt my heart drop. "That's a lie. I never said anything of the sort." He nodded slowly. "I figured as much. That's why I'm glad you came." Mrs. Cole, that young woman, asked very pointed questions. She wanted to know whether Daniel could sell his half of the ranch without your approval, and if there was any clause giving you sole control. "What did you tell her?" "That such matters are confidential." She didn't take it well. He adjusted his glasses. "Forgive me, Maggie, but is something happening at the ranch I should know about?" I hesitated, then told him everything: the wedding, the argument, the dinner, Jessica in the study, the missing envelope. He listened quietly, not interrupting once. When I finished, he steepled his fingers and spoke softly. "Maggie, that envelope you mentioned, I know what it is." My breath caught. "You do? Your husband asked me to notarize a sealed letter before he died. He said it was to protect you in case anyone, even family, ever tried to challenge the will. I never knew what he wrote, but he insisted only you should have it." "Do you have a copy?" I asked quickly. He shook his head. "No, your husband was clear, one original only. He called it his insurance against betrayal." Those words made my throat tighten. Mr. Harper looked at me with something that wasn't quite pity, more like warning. "Maggie, you need to be careful. I've seen this before, families tearing each other apart over land and inheritance. When money gets involved, people change, even the ones you love most." "Daniel would never," I began. He raised a hand gently. "Maybe not willingly. But influence is a dangerous thing." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The office felt smaller, the air heavier. Finally, I said, "What should I do?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "Protect yourself. And whatever was in that letter, find it before someone else does." When I got home, the sun was setting behind the barn. The ranch looked peaceful, too peaceful, like a painting that hides something dark beneath the paint. I sat at William's desk again, running my hands over the wood, feeling every scratch, every groove he'd left behind. And then, for the first time since he died, I whispered aloud, "William, if you can hear me, I think it's starting." That night, as the wind howled through the windows, I realized something terrifying. The letter wasn't just missing. It was stolen, and whoever took it now held the power to destroy everything my family had ever built. The next morning, the phone rang again. I nearly didn't answer. Part of me wanted to throw it into the sink and let it drown, but curiosity has a way of sounding like hope when it's your own child on the line. It was Daniel. "Mom," he began, his voice soft, cautious. "Jessica wants to have lunch with you tomorrow, just you and her." My heart skipped. "Just the two of us?" "Yes," he said quickly. "She wants to make peace. You've both been through a lot, and I think she really wants to fix things." Fix things? That was the same phrase William used when he was repairing fences before a storm tore them down again. Something deep inside me told me not to go, but something stronger, that relentless pull of a mother's heart, said I had to. So I said, "All right, tell her I'll be there." The next day, I got dressed carefully: black pants, a crisp white blouse, and a simple jacket. Nothing fancy, nothing that could be mistaken for armor. The keys hung under my blouse, cool against my chest, the only protection I had left. The restaurant was one of those renovated ranch-style places on the edge of town, the kind where they charge you triple for what you can cook better at home. When I walked in, Jessica was already there, sitting by the window, her phone in her hand and a glass of white wine half gone. She looked up with that perfect smile that could have sold forgiveness to a saint. "Maggie, you look lovely. Please sit down." "Thank you," I said, taking the chair across from her. She waved at the waiter. "Water for Mrs. Cole, please. I remember you prefer it over wine." The way she said it, like she knew me, made my skin crawl. "I'm really glad you came," she began, folding her hands neatly. "I know things have been tense." "Tense?" I repeated. "You mean since you told my son to throw me out of his own wedding?" Her smile faltered for a split second, then returned. "You have every right to be upset. I won't pretend that night went well. But I also know we're both strong women who love the same man. Surely we can find some middle ground." I said nothing, I just waited. People like Jessica always talk themselves into revealing what they really want. After a sip of wine, she leaned forward. "Maggie, I'm not your enemy." "That's good to hear," I said flatly. "I just want what's best for Daniel. He's under so much pressure, torn between us, trying to keep everyone happy. It's not fair to him." I raised an eyebrow. "No one asked him to choose." She smiled sweetly. "But he feels like he has to. Especially when it comes to the ranch." There it was, the real reason for this little peace offering. She continued, her voice smooth as silk. "Look, Maggie, the property is, well, it's huge, it's beautiful. But it's also expensive and difficult to maintain. Daniel worries about you living there alone. Wouldn't it be easier to sell or rent or sell?" I cut in. "You mean hand it over?" She blinked innocently. "Of course not. I'm just saying we could turn it into something useful. A boutique inn, maybe. I have contacts in the hospitality industry. We could make it a family business, shared profits, shared decisions. Everyone wins." I felt my pulse quicken, but I kept my voice steady. "And who would hold the keys?" She hesitated for half a second, just long enough to reveal the truth. "Well, someone has to manage it daily." "I could, no," I said firmly. Her eyes flickered, the smile cracking. "Maggie, please, I'm offering you a chance to make life easier. You deserve comfort. You could move to the city, buy an apartment, live close to Daniel and me. No more long nights alone in that big old house." "At my age, right?" I said. She froze, then laughed lightly. "I didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did." Her expression shifted, the charm draining away like spilled wine. "You're being selfish," she said, voice sharper now. "This isn't just about you, it's about your son, his future family, his child." "His child?" I repeated, my heart thudding. "Are you?" She smiled again, softer this time. "Not yet. But someday soon." I leaned back, staring at her, at the careful calculation behind her every word. "You think you can charm your way into this family," I said quietly. "But you don't love my son, Jessica. You love what he owns." Her smile vanished completely. "You're wrong," she said coldly. "I love what we could build if you just stop standing in the way." I stood up, placing a few dollars on the table for my water. "I'm done standing in the way. You tell my son that when he wants to see me, he knows where to find me." Then I turned and walked out, calm, steady, unbroken. But as I stepped outside, the sunlight hit the keys beneath my blouse, and I realized something chilling. This wasn't just a battle over land. It was a war, and Jessica Reed had just declared it. When I got home, the phone was already ringing. And somehow, I knew before I even picked it up that Jessica wasn't done. She'd only fired the first shot. By the time I got home, the sky was already bruised with sunset. The ranch was quiet, too quiet. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. The phone was ringing when I opened the door, just as I'd feared. I picked it up. "Hello, Mrs. Cole?" The voice on the other end was low, hurried. It was Mr. Harper. "Mr. Harper, what's wrong?" "Forgive the hour," he said, "but I need to see you. Now, it's about your husband's letter." My stomach tightened. "The one that's missing?" "Yes," he said gravely. "I think I found something you should see." 20 minutes later, his old Cadillac rolled up the dirt road, its headlights cutting through the dark. He stepped out, coat buttoned tight, clutching a thick envelope. When he entered the living room, he didn't sit, just stood there, breathing heavily, eyes serious. "After our conversation yesterday," he said, "I couldn't stop thinking about that missing letter. I went through every archived file at my office, every notarized record from the month before William's passing, and I found this." He held out the envelope like it was a live grenade. "What is it?" I asked, my heart pounding. "It's a copy," he said. "The only one I ever made against your husband's wishes. He never knew. Something in his tone that day, it worried me. I thought you might need this someday." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a single yellowed page, William's handwriting. The moment I saw the slanted letters, the ink faded at the edges, I felt my throat tighten. Mr. Harper turned away politely, giving me space as I began to read. Maggie, my love, if you're reading this, it means someone is trying to take the ranch from you. And if that's happening, it means I was right to worry. 2 months ago at the hospital, I met an old man sick like me. He told me a story that's haunted me ever since. He had one son, loved him more than anything, gave him the family land, the inheritance, everything. But after the son married, things changed. His daughter-in-law began whispering in his ear, small things at first, how the house was too big, how the old ways were too expensive, how modern life needed modern choices. One day, she convinced him to sign a power of attorney. She said it would help her handle the paperwork for his illness. 2 weeks later, they sold the family home. They put the old man in a nursing facility, and he died there alone, without his land, without his dignity. When he told me that story, he wept. He said, "It wasn't my son who betrayed me, it was my manipulated son." Maggie, that story terrified me. Not because I thought Daniel was capable of it, but because love makes people blind, and blindness makes them vulnerable. That's why I made sure you control the ranch, not him. Not because I don't trust our boy, but because I trust you to know when someone's intentions are pure and when they're poison. If anyone pressures you for the keys, if anyone calls you stubborn or old, if anyone tries to convince you the ranch is a burden, resist them. This land isn't property. It's memory, sacrifice, blood, and love. You are the guardian of all that. Don't let anyone, not even Daniel, convince you that you are in the way. You are the door, Maggie, and only you can decide who gets to enter. All my love forever, William. When I finished reading, my tears had soaked through the paper. Mr. Harper placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Your husband was a wise man, Maggie. He saw the storm coming long before anyone else did. He knew, I whispered. He knew this would happen. He didn't know who, Mr. Harper said, but he knew someone. I folded the letter carefully, clutching it like a lifeline. What do I do now? He took a slow breath. Legally, you're protected. Daniel can't sell, rent, or touch the ranch without your signed consent. But, the law protects property, Maggie. It doesn't protect hearts. I looked at him, confused. They can still hurt you, he said softly. They can claim you're unfit, mentally unstable. They could try to take power of attorney. It's rare, but it happens. But I'm fine, I said. I'm perfectly fine. I know, but in the hands of the right lawyer and the wrong woman, words can twist into weapons. The fire crackled in the hearth. The sound felt too loud for what he'd just said. So what do I do? He met my eyes. Get ahead of them, see your doctor. Get medical proof that you're sound of mind. And Maggie, keep that letter safe, somewhere they'll never find it. When he left, the night was cold enough to bite. I locked every door, checked every window, and stood at the porch for a long moment, clutching the letter to my chest. Somewhere out there, Jessica Reed was planning her next move. But she didn't know what I held now, my husband's last words, my final defense. That night, as I hid William's letter in the old safe behind his portrait, I made myself a promise. If they wanted a war for this land, they were about to meet the wrong woman to start it with. The morning after Mr. Harper's visit, I woke before sunrise. The sky over the ranch glowed pale orange, the kind of dawn that used to bring comfort. But that day, it just looked like a warning. William's letter sat folded on the table, beside my coffee mug. I read it again, tracing his handwriting with my fingertips. It wasn't just paper, it was prophecy. He had seen this coming. By 7 o'clock, I'd made two decisions. First, I was going to follow Mr. Harper's advice. Second, I was going to be smarter than both of them. I got dressed, pulled my hair into a bun, and tucked the letter inside my purse. The keys, as always, hung on the chain around my neck. They felt heavier now, like armor. My first stop was the doctor's office. Dr. Carson had known me for years. He was in his 60s, calm, sharp-minded, and used to my stubbornness. When I walked in, he smiled. Maggie, haven't seen you in ages. What brings you in today? I took a deep breath. I need a full physical and mental evaluation. His brows lifted. That's unusual. Everything all right? Let's just say I'm making sure there's no room for lies down the line. He studied my face for a moment, then nodded. Say no more. For the next hour, he tested my reflexes, my memory, my vision. Asked me questions that seemed simple but carried weight. Dates, names, numbers, short stories to repeat back. I passed every one. When it was over, he leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Cole, you're as sharp as ever. I'd say you're in better shape than most people 20 years younger. Good, I said, trying to smile. Can you put that in writing? He chuckled softly, signing the papers. You're not going to tell me why, are you? Not today, I said, taking the sealed envelope. But one day you'll understand. From there, I drove straight to First County Bank, a small brick building where everyone still knew your name. The manager, an old friend of William's, greeted me warmly. Morning, Maggie. What can we do for you? I need to open a safety deposit box, I said. He nodded. Of course. For valuables, something more valuable than gold. He smiled politely, not asking questions. Once the paperwork was done, I slipped William's letter, the property deeds, the will, and now the doctor's certificate into the steel box. As the vault door closed, I felt my lungs finally fill with air. For the first time in weeks, I felt safe. But that feeling didn't last long. That afternoon, the phone rang again. Mom, Daniel said, his voice brisk. We need to talk, I swallowed hard. What is it now? He hesitated, then said. Jessica told me about your meeting yesterday. She said you were rude to her, that you called her names. I felt the anger spark in my chest. That's not true. I told her the ranch isn't for sale and she didn't like hearing it. Mom, he said, his tone sharp, no one said anything about selling. We were just exploring ideas. You don't have to get so defensive. Defensive? I repeated. Daniel, she's trying to take what your father built and you're letting her. There was a long pause, then he sighed. Mom, Jessica thinks you need help. Help, I said quietly. Yes, he said, professional help. She's worried you're getting too attached to that house, that it's unhealthy. Maybe talking to someone, a therapist, could help you let go. And there it was. The first shot fired in the next phase of their plan, exactly what Mr. Harper had warned me about. I steadied my voice. Do you think I'm crazy, Daniel? No, of course not, he said quickly. I just think, you think what? That I'm some senile old woman clinging to the past? Mom, he said, his tone pleading now, I'm trying to help you. You're alone out there. You could fall or get sick or… I've lived here my entire life, I interrupted. I've worked this land with my bare hands. I raised you here. I don't need help. I need respect. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice sounded tired, distant. You can't live on memories forever, Mom. No, I said softly, but I can live on my own terms. He sighed. Then maybe it's time we figure out another way. Another way to do what? I asked, but he didn't answer. The line went dead. That night I sat on the porch, listening to the crickets and the whisper of the wind across the fields. The stars looked cold, almost judgmental. I thought about Daniel's voice, not angry, just empty. The voice of a son slipping further away from the mother who raised him. I touched the keys around my neck. They felt like the only thing holding me to this earth. I thought the danger would come from strangers, but now I knew better. The real threat wasn't outside my home. It was calling me Mom. 3 quiet weeks passed. 3 weeks where the phone stayed silent, where no trucks came down the dirt road, where even the wind seemed unsure if it was welcome here anymore. I tried to fill the days with chores, feeding the horses, mending fences, watering the garden. But every time I looked at the empty driveway, the same thought echoed in my head. When silence lasts too long, it's never peace. It's the calm before the storm. And that storm arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I was trimming the rose bushes my mother had planted 40 years ago when I heard the rumble of engines, not one, but three. When I looked up, dust swirled across the road. Two black SUVs and Daniel's old pickup pulled into the yard. My hands went cold. Daniel stepped out first. He looked tired, too thin, eyes sunken, but there was a tightness in his jaw that wasn't exhaustion. It was resolve. Jessica followed, perfectly dressed as always, in a cream suit and sunglasses that hid her eyes. Behind them, two men climbed out of the SUVs, both in gray suits, carrying briefcases. Lawyers. I wiped my hands on my jeans and stood tall. What is this? Daniel avoided my gaze. Mom, can we go inside? We need to talk. No, I said firmly. If this is business, it can be said right here. One of the lawyers stepped forward. Mrs. Cole, my name is Mr. Williams, and this is my associate, Mr. Scott. We represent your son, Mr. Daniel Cole. I felt my stomach twist. Represent him? In what? Jessica smiled faintly. Just a few legal clarifications, Maggie. Nothing serious. I crossed my arms. Then say it. Mr. Williams opened his briefcase, pulling out a stack of papers clipped together neatly. We've reviewed your late husband's will. While it does grant you administrative control of the property, it also gives Mr. Cole legal ownership of 50% of the estate. Under state law, he is entitled to request a division of assets if he believes the property's current management is diminishing its value. Diminishing its? I stopped, my voice cracking. This ranch is in perfect condition. Mr. Scott spoke next. Physically, yes. Economically, no. The property generates no income, incurs high maintenance costs, and by our estimate, loses market value every year it remains idle. I stared at them, my pulse hammering in my ears. This is my home. It's not supposed to generate income. Legally, Mr. Williams replied coolly, it's both a residence and an asset. Daniel finally looked up, and in his eyes, I saw something that broke me. Not anger, not guilt. Just weariness. Mom, he said softly, we're not trying to take it from you. We just want to find a way to make it work for all of us. I laughed bitterly. We. You mean her? Jessica stepped forward, still smiling like this was a friendly visit. Maggie, please don't make this harder. Look at this place. It's too much for one person. You're 57. You should be enjoying life, not running a ranch alone. I don't need your sympathy, I snapped, and I don't need your plans. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Mom, please. This doesn't have to turn ugly. It's already ugly, I said, my voice trembling. You brought lawyers to your mother's doorstep. Jessica's tone hardened. We're giving you options, Maggie. If we sell the property, you'd get half the value, at least $1.5 million. You could move wherever you want. I stared at her, speechless. You want me to sell my soul for money? Her voice dropped to a whisper. We want you to let go. Something inside me snapped. I stepped forward, meeting her eyes, and said, You'll get this land when you pry these keys from my cold hands. The words came out like a growl. Mr. Williams cleared his throat. Mrs. Cole, I must warn you, if an amicable settlement can't be reached, we'll have to file a court petition for property division. Daniel flinched. Let's not. Jessica touched his arm gently. It's for the best, honey. That small gesture, that single word made my blood run cold. I turned to Daniel. She's using you and you can't even see it. His jaw clenched. Don't do that, Mom. Don't make this about her. Then make it about you, I said, voice shaking. You're betraying your father's memory. You're betraying me. Something flickered across his face, guilt, maybe, or shame, but then he looked away. You're not being reasonable. Reasonable? I said. You're standing on my land with lawyers threatening to take my home, and I'm the unreasonable one? Jessica sighed. Maggie, this isn't personal. It's nothing but personal. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air between us was thick with everything left unsaid, every memory, every broken promise, every ounce of love turning to ash. Finally, Mr. Williams closed his folder. You'll receive the court documents within 2 weeks. We're sorry it's come to this. They all turned and left, the lawyers first, then Jessica, and finally Daniel. He paused by the truck, his back to me. You're making a mistake, Mom, he said quietly. No, I whispered. You are? He didn't look back. The trucks rolled down the dirt road, leaving a cloud of dust and silence behind. When it settled, I was alone again, but this time it wasn't peace I felt, it was war. As the dust cleared and the ranch fell silent again, I realized something my husband had always known. Love makes people blind, but greed makes them monsters. And both were now living under my son's name. After they left, the silence of the ranch didn't feel like peace anymore. It felt like the echo of betrayal. I stood by the porch railing for a long time, staring down the road where the dust had settled, the same road where Daniel took his first steps as a child, chasing the family dog barefoot through the dirt. Now that same road carried lawyers and lies. I went inside and locked the door behind me. My hands shook as I brewed coffee. Though I didn't need caffeine, anger kept me wide awake. When the first sip hit my tongue, I realized something cold but clear. They wanted me to panic, to crumble, to make a mistake they could use against me. But William hadn't married a fool. The next morning, I drove straight to Mr. Harper's office. When he saw my face, he stood before I even said a word. They came, I said simply. He sighed. I figured they might. I handed him the stack of documents the lawyers had left. He scanned the pages quickly, his expression darkening by the minute. This isn't just a division request, he said. They're arguing financial mismanagement, claiming you're letting the property depreciate, that you're emotionally unstable and incapable of maintaining it properly. I froze. Unstable? He nodded grimly. They've attached an affidavit from Jessica. She's alleging erratic behavior, paranoia, confusion, and hostility. She's building a narrative to question your mental fitness. I clenched my fists. She's trying to have me declared unfit to manage my own land. Exactly, he said. Once that claim is in court, they'll push for a conservatorship. If granted, Daniel would gain power of attorney, effectively taking full control of the ranch. For a moment, the room tilted. Then William's voice echoed in my head. If anyone calls you stubborn or old, if anyone tries to convince you the ranch is a burden, resist them. I took a deep breath. Then we fight. Mr. Harper smiled faintly. That's the spirit I was hoping for. He pulled open a drawer and placed a thick folder on the table. These are your husband's signed estate amendments and the notarized letter we found. Together, they form a strong defense. But we'll need more. More? proof that you're of sound mind and that the ranch is well maintained. Photos, receipts, your doctor's certification, all of it, will build a wall so solid they won't be able to climb over it. I nodded, determination replacing the ache in my chest. For the next few days, I worked like I hadn't worked in years. I documented everything: the barns, the fences, the livestock. I took photos of the vegetable garden blooming in the backfield. I pulled out every maintenance receipt, every tax document, every proof of payment I'd made in the last decade. Each piece of paper became a brick in my defense. Mr. Harper came by on Friday to collect it all. When he looked through the folder, he smiled. "This is good, very good, you've got the evidence. Now we can make a counter filing." "What kind of filing?" I asked. He leaned back. "A petition of sole authority. You'll request full control of the property on the grounds of your husband's original will and your son's attempt at coercion. We'll attach the letter, the doctor's report, and the photos. It will establish you as the sole rightful administrator, permanently." I hesitated. "That means cutting Daniel out completely?" His voice softened. "Maggie, he made that choice when he sided with her." I looked down at my hands, calloused, scarred, the hands of a woman who had built a life from dirt and sweat. "He's still my son," I whispered. "Yes," Mr. Harper said gently. "And sometimes the hardest part of being a parent is protecting your child from the mistakes they don't even know they're making." That night, I sat on the porch with William's letter in my lap. The stars stretched across the sky, endless and cold. I thought about Daniel, about the little boy who once brought me wildflowers, and the man who now brought lawyers. Grief and love are strange twins, they both ache in the same place. I whispered into the night, "I'm sorry, Daniel, but I'm not giving up your father's legacy, not for anyone." I folded the letter, tucked it back into its envelope, and placed it in the safe once more. As I turned the key, I realized I wasn't just protecting the ranch. I was protecting myself. By the end of that week, Mr. Harper had filed the petition. But as I stood on my porch the next morning, watching another unfamiliar car pull into the driveway, I knew something, or someone, was coming who wouldn't wait for the court to decide. The next morning, I woke to the sound of tires on gravel. At first, I thought it was the mail truck, but when I looked out the window, I saw a silver sedan parked by the barn. It wasn't from around here. Too clean, too polished. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, dressed in a gray blazer, clipboard in hand. Her shoes were city shoes, the kind that had never seen mud. I watched her from the porch as she walked up, her polite smile already rehearsed. "Mrs. Cole?" she asked brightly. "Yes," she extended her hand. "I'm Corinne Fields from the County Adult Welfare Services Department. I'm here for a routine wellness visit." I frowned. "A what?" She glanced at her clipboard. "We received a referral expressing concern about your living conditions and mental health. I just need to ask you a few questions and take a quick look around your home." My stomach turned cold. There it was, Jessica's next move. I forced a calm smile. "I see. Well, you've come a long way. Would you like some coffee?" Her smile softened. "That would be lovely, thank you." I led her inside. The kitchen was spotless, not because I'd been expecting anyone, but because it always was. My mother used to say, "A messy house invites doubt." As I poured the coffee, she glanced around, her eyes moving over every surface, every photo, every sign of my life. "So," she began gently, "you live here alone?" "Yes, no nearby family." "My son lives in the city," I said, careful not to let emotion leak into my voice. "Do you see him often?" "Not lately." She nodded, jotting something down on her clipboard. "And how's your health?" "Strong as a horse." She smiled politely, as if humoring a child. "Any trouble remembering things, misplacing items?" "Forgetting dates?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "I remember everything." She blinked, perhaps not expecting the edge in my tone. "That's good, it's just part of the checklist." I leaned forward slightly. "Let me guess, someone told you I'm not well, that I'm unstable." She hesitated. "I can't disclose who made the referral, ma'am." "No need," I said. "I already know." Corinne looked uncomfortable. "I assure you, Mrs. Cole, these evaluations are standard. I just have to confirm that you're managing your affairs safely." "Then you're welcome to look around," I said, standing. "I've got nothing to hide." For the next half hour, I guided her through the house. She examined every room, the kitchen, the living room, the bedrooms. She noted how tidy everything was, how organized the pantry looked, how all the utilities were in working order. When we reached William's old study, she paused. "You keep this locked?" "Yes," I said quickly. "It holds private family records." She nodded and made another note. Finally, we went outside. The horses neighed softly as we passed the stables. The air smelled of hay and earth, the scent of life itself. "This is beautiful land," she said softly. "You take care of all this yourself?" "Every inch." her tone softened. You must love it here. I do, I said, watching her scribble again. That's what worries them, isn't it, that I love it too much? She looked up. Excuse me? People like that think love makes you weak, I said. But it's the only thing that keeps you standing when everything else falls apart. She didn't reply, just watched me for a moment before closing her folder. Well, Mrs. Cole, I think I've seen enough. Back in the kitchen, she packed up her things, thanked me for my time, and said she'd file her report within the week. Before leaving, she paused by the door. If it's all right to say, I don't think you have anything to worry about. Our eyes met. She gave me a small, genuine smile, not the polite kind. You remind me of my grandmother. Stubborn but strong. I couldn't help but smile back. Thank you, Miss Fields. Stubborn's what keeps me alive. When her car disappeared down the road, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. For the first time in days, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I'd won a round. But that night, as I sat on the porch under the dim porch light, I noticed something strange. A second set of tire tracks in the dirt, fresh ones, leading up to the barn. The county car had gone one way, the other tracks turned toward the side gate, and they were from a different vehicle. Someone else had been here. I stood there under the moonlight, heart pounding, staring at those tire tracks. If Jessica had sent the county worker to test me, then who, I wondered, had come after her to finish the job? The next morning, the sun rose red, the kind of red that makes you think something's coming. I didn't sleep a wink that night. Every creak of the house, every whisper of the wind had my nerves on edge. By dawn, I went outside with my flashlight, tracing those tire tracks from last night. They curved behind the barn and stopped near the side fence, where the grass was flattened and the gate hung slightly open. Someone had been here. I knelt to the dirt, brushing my fingers over the impressions. The tires were small, not from a truck, more like a compact car. There were boot prints, too, men's size, I guessed, heavy soles. Whoever it was, they hadn't come for a visit. I checked the barn first, nothing. Then the tool shed, same. Finally, I went around to the back of the house. That's when I saw it. The lock on the study window was broken. A cold weight settled in my chest. I pushed the window open and climbed in. The air inside smelled faintly of smoke and something else, perfume. Expensive perfume. Jessica's perfume. My heart dropped. The drawers of William's desk were half open, papers shuffled out of place. The safe behind his portrait stood untouched, locked tight, but everything else had been searched. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. I checked the floor, the rug, the shelves. Then I saw it, a single sheet of paper lying under the chair. I picked it up carefully. It was one of the documents from Mr. Harper, a photocopy of William's estate amendment. Someone had gone through it, and fast. There were faint creases where fingers had held it tight, and a smudge of lipstick in the corner. Jessica had been here, or at least someone she sent. By the time Mr. Harper arrived that afternoon, I was already waiting on the porch with the paper in my hand. He frowned the moment he saw my face. What happened? Someone broke in, I said. They didn't take anything, but they were looking for this. He took the paper, inspecting the edges. That's your husband's estate revision. The clause that gives you full control. She must have found out it existed, I said. Maybe she's trying to find a loophole. He nodded grimly. And if she can't find one, she'll make one. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Maggie, I need to tell you something. Yesterday, Jessica's attorney filed a supplemental motion. They're claiming fraudulent concealment. My jaw tightened. What does that mean? It means they're accusing you of hiding financial documents and altering your husband's will after his death. I stared at him, speechless. That's ridiculous. William's will was notarized. I know, he said, and I can prove it, but it won't matter if she convinces a judge to freeze your access to the property until the case is resolved. That's what this break-in was for, to get ahead of you. My hands trembled, anger replacing fear. They're trying to paint me as some greedy old woman clinging to a pile of dirt. Mr. Harper sighed. And you're the one person standing between them and that dirt turning into profit. I took a long, steady breath. Then let's fight back. He smiled slightly. I was hoping you'd say that. That evening, we sat in the study, going over every paper we had. The fire crackled low, casting orange light across the walls. Mr. Harper organized everything into labeled folders: property deeds, tax records, maintenance receipts, legal correspondence. He placed William's letter on top, its edges worn but its message unshakable. Tomorrow, he said, I'll submit a petition for emergency injunction. It'll freeze their ability to file further actions until this break-in is investigated. If we play this right, we can turn their accusation into our advantage. I looked at him, eyes tired but burning. You mean prove they're the ones breaking the law? Exactly. We worked for hours. When he finally left, it was past midnight. I walked him to the door, the crickets humming in the fields. Be careful, Maggie, he said. Jessica's getting desperate. Desperation makes people reckless. I nodded. She can come at me with lawyers, lies, or lipstick. I'm not moving. He chuckled softly. That's the Maggie I know. After he left, I went back inside. The house was quiet again, but it felt different, not peaceful, not safe. I walked to the study, double-checked the window lock, and then glanced at the portrait above the safe. For the first time in years, I whispered, William, I could use your courage right now. The wind howled outside, rattling the window panes. Somewhere in that sound, I swore I heard his voice, steady, strong, and sure. Stand your ground, Maggie. The truth's your weapon now. I smiled faintly, wiped a tear, and turned off the light. I thought the worst they could do was take me to court, but I was wrong. By morning, I'd learned that Jessica Reed wasn't just after my land, she was after my freedom. The knock came just after sunrise. 3 hard raps, not the kind of knock neighbors use, but the kind that means business. I opened the door to find a young man in a suit, holding a clipboard and a sealed envelope. His expression was stiff, professional, like someone who delivers bad news often enough to stop feeling it. Mrs. Margaret Cole? He asked. Yes, I said slowly. He handed me the envelope. You've been served. Have a good day, ma'am. And just like that, he turned and walked back to his car. For a moment, I just stood there on the porch, staring at the envelope in my hand. The morning sun felt colder than usual. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter stamped in red. Superior Court of Fairview County petition for conservatorship. I scanned the first lines, and my knees nearly gave out. The petitioner, Daniel Cole, hereby requests full legal and financial conservatorship over the estate and affairs of Margaret Cole, on grounds of cognitive decline, emotional instability, and inability to manage her property or personal safety. Beneath Daniel's name was Jessica Reed Cole, listed as co-petitioner. They weren't just trying to take the ranch anymore. They were trying to take me. I sat down at the kitchen table, hands trembling. The words blurred together. Mentally unfit, incapable, immediate evaluation, temporary guardianship pending hearing. Tears welled in my eyes, but they weren't the soft kind, they burned. Not because of fear, but because of betrayal. My son, my only son. He'd signed those papers. By the time I reached Mr. Harper's office, my hands were still shaking, the summons clutched so tight it was wrinkled. He looked up as I entered, his face softening the instant he saw me. Maggie, what happened? I dropped the envelope on his desk. They filed it. He opened it quickly, scanning the pages. His expression darkened. Conservatorship. Damn it, what does it mean exactly? I asked, my voice unsteady. He exhaled slowly. It means they're asking the court to declare you mentally unfit to handle your own affairs. If approved, your son would gain total legal control, your bank accounts, your medical choices, and yes, the ranch. I stared at him, the words hitting me one by one like stones. They could take everything? He nodded grimly. Everything? My throat felt dry. How could he do this? Daniel knows I'm fine. He knows I passed every medical test. Mr. Harper looked up. They attached their own doctor's note. It claims you refused professional counseling and displayed signs of paranoia and aggression. I blinked. Aggression? He sighed. Jessica must have recorded your argument during that lunch meeting. They're using your own words against you. I pressed my palms to my face. She planned this from the start. She's manipulative, he said quietly, but she's also clever. She's found a legal path that's hard to fight, but not impossible. I looked up. Tell me how? He took off his glasses, rubbing his eyes. We'll counterfile. We'll present your doctor's evaluation, your property records, William's letter, everything. But you'll need to keep calm. They'll try to provoke you at the hearing. If you lose your temper, even once, it'll reinforce their claims. I swallowed hard. So I have to sit there and listen to my son tell the world his mother's lost her mind? His eyes softened. Yes. And you have to smile while doing it. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I stood, straightened my shoulders, and said, then that's exactly what I'll do. That night, I couldn't bring myself to eat. I sat on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the fields. The light bled across the horizon, red and orange like the land itself was on fire. Inside, the house felt different, colder. Even the air seemed to carry the echo of betrayal. I looked at the photo of Daniel on the mantel, his graduation picture, that big, innocent smile. I whispered to it, what happened to you, my boy? For a long moment, I thought about burning that court letter. But William's voice came back to me again. Don't let anger decide what you'll regret tomorrow. So instead, I folded it neatly, placed it in a folder, and locked it inside the safe. When I turned the key, I realized something simple but powerful. Jessica Reed might have taken my son, but she wasn't going to take my sanity or my dignity. The court date was set for 2 weeks later. 2 weeks to prove I wasn't the madwoman they painted me to be. 2 weeks to show the world that the only thing crazier than losing everything was letting them think I'd surrender without a fight. The courthouse smelled of old paper and polished floors, cold, sterile, and nothing like home. I'd never been inside a courtroom before. But that morning, as I walked through those double doors in my navy dress and pearl earrings, the ones William had given me on our anniversary, I held my head high. I wasn't just walking in as a defendant. I was walking in as a woman who'd had enough. The clerk directed me to the left side of the courtroom. Across from me sat Daniel and Jessica, perfectly composed, like they'd practiced this scene 100 times. Daniel looked pale but determined, while Jessica, in her gray suit and polished hair, looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine cover titled How to Steal a Legacy and smile doing it. Mr. Harper leaned toward me. "Stay calm," he whispered, "no matter what they say." "I'm calm," I said quietly, "but I won't stay silent." He gave me a faint, knowing smile. "That's the Maggie I'm counting on." The judge entered, a stern man in his 60s, glasses perched low on his nose. "This court is now in session for the matter of Cole versus Cole." My stomach clenched. Hearing my own name on both sides of that title felt like a wound. Jessica's lawyer, Mr. Williams, stood first. "Your Honor, this case concerns the welfare and stability of Mrs. Margaret Cole, an elderly widow living alone on a large property. We believe she is no longer capable of managing her estate and finances, and that her son, Daniel Cole, should be granted conservatorship." He spoke smoothly, like this was all routine, like he wasn't describing a living, breathing human being. Then came the evidence. Jessica produced photos, me standing in the yard at night, flashlight in hand, inspecting the barn after the break-in. To anyone else, I looked anxious, paranoid. To her, it was ammunition. "Mrs. Cole has displayed increasing paranoia," Mr. Williams said. "She believes people are spying on her, claims her home is being targeted, and has reportedly accused family members of theft." Jessica added, her voice dripping with false concern. "We love her dearly, but she's been forgetting things, locking herself out, leaving doors open, misplacing documents. We just want to make sure she's safe." Every word was a lie, wrapped in sweetness. Mr. Harper stood. "Your Honor, my client is of sound mind and has medical certification to prove it." He handed the doctor's report to the clerk. "Mrs. Cole recently underwent a full evaluation, physical and psychological. She passed with exceptional results." The judge nodded, flipping through the pages. "Duly noted." Mr. Harper continued, "Furthermore, we have evidence of attempted coercion, trespassing, and possible theft involving Mrs. Cole's private documents." Jessica's smile faltered. "That's absurd, is it?" Mr. Harper said calmly. "Because we have photographic proof of a break-in, complete with partial fingerprints. The sheriff's office is investigating, and they match someone in this very room." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Jessica's face paled. Daniel turned to her sharply. "What is he talking about?" he whispered. Mr. Harper lifted a small envelope. "The sheriff's deputy sent this to my office yesterday." The partial prints found on Mrs. Cole's desk matched Jessica Reed Cole. The room fell silent. Jessica blinked rapidly. "That's ridiculous. I've been to that house dozens of times." "Not through a locked window," Mr. Harper said dryly. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Reed Cole, you'll have your chance to explain. For now, sit down." She did, lips tight and hands trembling. Mr. Harper turned to me. "Mrs. Cole, could you please address the court?" I stood slowly, feeling every eye on me. "Your Honor," I began, "I'm not here because I lost my mind. I'm here because I refused to lose my home." I held up William's letter. "My husband saw this coming. He knew greed would tear this family apart. He trusted me to protect the land, not just for myself, but for the generations before and after me." I turned to Daniel, my voice shaking. "Son, I don't need your pity or your power. I just needed you to remember who you were before she told you to forget." Daniel's face fell, guilt flashing in his eyes. The judge cleared his throat. "I've heard enough for today." He looked at Jessica, then Daniel. "These are serious allegations. Until the break-in investigation concludes, I am denying the petition for conservatorship. Mrs. Cole retains full control of her property and affairs." He struck the gavel. "Court adjourned." Jessica stood abruptly, storming toward the door. Daniel lingered, staring at me across the aisle. For a brief, flickering second, I saw my little boy again, the one who used to chase fireflies on summer nights. He opened his mouth, then closed it. And just like that, he followed her out. As the courtroom emptied, Mr. Harper placed a hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "You won today, Maggie, but something tells me Jessica isn't done losing." And deep down, I knew he was right. The war for the ranch wasn't over. It had just changed battlegrounds. The day after the hearing, the ranch felt alive again. The sky was bright, the horses restless, the wind warm. For the first time in months, I felt like the land was breathing with me, not against me. Mr. Harper called that morning. "You did beautifully, Maggie," he said. "The judge saw through their game, but keep your guard up. Jessica's the type who doesn't lose quietly." I smiled faintly. "I know, Harold. That's why I'm staying ready." After we hung up, I went about my day, fixing the gate, feeding the horses, sweeping the porch. Ordinary things, simple things, the kind of work that keeps your hands busy so your heart doesn't ache. By evening, the sky had gone gold. I was locking up the barn when I heard it, the faint crunch of tires on gravel. My stomach tightened. When I turned toward the road, I saw a black sedan parked near the gate. Jessica stepped out. Alone, she was dressed in black, a tailored jacket, dark pants, her hair perfectly smooth. Even from a distance, I could see the anger on her face. Not the kind that burns hot, but the kind that freezes everything it touches. I didn't move as she approached, I just watched. "Maggie," she said sharply, stopping a few feet away. "You humiliated me." I crossed my arms. "No, Jessica, you humiliated yourself." Her lips tightened. "You think you won, don't you? That pathetic little letter and your small town lawyer, you think that'll protect you?" "It already did," I said evenly. "You lost." She laughed, cold, brittle. "You don't understand the kind of people I know. You think this land matters to anyone but you? To me, it's $1 million opportunity. To investors, it's a gold mine. And to Daniel, leave him out of this," I snapped. Her eyes glinted. "Oh, I intend to. He's done with you, Maggie. He finally sees who you are, a bitter old woman clinging to dirt and ghosts." I took a slow step toward her. "I'd rather cling to ghosts than become one." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. "You see this? It's an offer from a real estate firm. Cash, full buyout. They're ready to buy tomorrow. Daniel doesn't need your approval anymore." I frowned. "You're lying," she smirked. "You think you've got the law on your side, but Daniel's half owner. I've convinced him to sell his share. Once it's done, you'll be forced off this land through partition. The court can't stop it." My breath caught. "He wouldn't." She stepped closer, her perfume sharp in the cool air. "He already did." The words cut like a blade. I tried to steady my voice. "You really think a piece of paper can uproot a legacy?" Jessica tilted her head. "You're out of your time, Maggie. The world doesn't care about legacy, it cares about leverage." And then, as she turned to leave, she said something that snapped whatever mercy I had left. "You should have sold when you had the chance. Now you'll die here alone, just like your husband." I moved before I knew I'd moved. Not to hit her, no, that would have been too easy. I grabbed her wrist, firm, steady, cold. Her eyes widened. "You listen to me," I said quietly. "You can buy every lawyer in this state. You can twist my son's heart into something unrecognizable. But you'll never own this land, because you don't understand it. You don't hear it." She tried to pull away. I didn't let go. "This land doesn't belong to whoever holds the deed," I said. "It belongs to whoever loves it enough to bleed for it." I finally released her hand. "And you. You've never loved anything that didn't serve you." She took a shaky step back, her composure cracking. "You're insane." "No," I said softly. "I'm awake." She turned, furious, storming back toward her car. The gravel kicked up beneath her heels, the sound sharp as glass. As she reached the gate, Daniel's truck pulled up. He jumped out, looking between us. "What's going on here?" Jessica glared at him. "Tell your mother it's over." Daniel looked at me, and for a moment I saw confusion, regret, maybe even shame. "Mom," he said quietly, "is it true? Did you threaten her?" I took a deep breath. "No, Daniel." I reminded her who she's dealing with. Jessica huffed. "You'll regret this." She slid into her car, slammed the door, and drove off, dust trailing behind her like smoke. Daniel stayed behind, hands shoved deep in his pockets. "I didn't sign anything," he said quietly. "She told you that to scare you?" I exhaled, the tension in my chest finally breaking. "Then maybe there's still hope for you yet." He looked down. "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have listened sooner." I touched his arm. "It's not too late to remember who you are." He nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "I'm ending it with her." For the first time in a long while, I let myself believe him. As Daniel drove away, I looked out over the same fields that had nearly been stolen, the same land my husband's hands had shaped. The wind rustled through the grass, whispering something I hadn't heard in months: peace. But I knew better than to think it was over. Because greed doesn't die quietly, it just waits for its next chance to strike. The next morning, the ranch was wrapped in mist. The world looked soft, almost new, the kind of morning that makes you believe in second chances. I stood on the porch with a cup of coffee in my hands, watching the fog drift across the fields. The air smelled of wet earth and hay. For the first time in months, my heart didn't feel heavy. It just was. Daniel's truck pulled into the driveway not long after sunrise. He stepped out quietly, no suit, no tension in his shoulders, just my son. He held a small box under one arm. "Morning, Mom," he said softly. I smiled faintly. "Morning." He hesitated, then walked closer. "I didn't sleep much last night, a lot to think about." I nodded. "Thinking's a good start." He glanced at the porch steps, then sat down beside me. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence between us wasn't sharp anymore, it was heavy, but honest. Finally, he said, "I told Jessica it's over." I turned to look at him. "And?" "She didn't take it well," he admitted. "She said I'd regret choosing you over her." I chuckled softly. "She was right. You'll regret it every time you have to do your own laundry." He smiled for the first time in what felt like years. "I deserve that." We sat there a little longer, watching the mist fade into sunlight. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said finally. His voice cracked. I let her get into my head. "I thought I was doing the right thing, protecting you, managing things responsibly. But she made it sound like you were lost, like you were hurting yourself by holding on to this place." I stared out at the fields. "And you believed her?" He nodded, shame flickering across his face. "Yeah." I let the silence hang for a moment, then said, "You know what your father used to say about this land?" Daniel shook his head. He said, "The earth remembers what love feels like. Every nail in that barn, every board in this house, we built it with our hands and our hearts. That's what gives it life. Not the money, not the deed, love." Daniel's eyes watered. "I forgot that." "You didn't forget," I said gently. "You just stopped listening." He reached into the box he'd brought and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a copy of his withdrawal form from the real estate deal, officially ending the attempted sale of his share. "It's done," he said. "No more lawyers, no more fights. The ranch stays whole. Your name stays first." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened as I looked at my son, not the man who'd hurt me, but the boy I'd raised. "Your father would be proud," I whispered. He smiled sadly. "You think so?" "I know so." We sat there in the warm morning air, watching the horses graze by the fence line. Then Daniel said quietly, "I think I want to stay for a while. Help around the ranch again, fix things up, maybe rebuild what I broke." I turned to him, tears in my eyes. "You don't have to ask, son. This is your home." He nodded, then looked toward the barn. "I'll start with that old gate." "It still squeaks," I laughed softly. "It's been squeaking since you were 10. "Then it's overdue," he said, smiling. That evening, after he'd gone to the barn, I walked into William's old study. The room glowed golden from the sunset. The letter was still in the safe, untouched, but I took it out one last time. I read it slowly, feeling the words settle like an old friend's embrace. "You are the door, Maggie, and only you can decide who gets to enter." I folded it carefully and placed it in the box with Daniel's withdrawal form, then set it on the mantel. The past and the present, side by side, where they belonged. When I stepped outside, the porch light flickered on, and Daniel was walking back from the barn, his shirt dirty, his smile wide. "Gates fixed," he called. "Took a little elbow grease." "Good," I said, laughing. "That gate's been waiting for you." He climbed the steps and stood beside me, both of us looking out over the land. The sky was a deep orange now, the sun dipping low, painting the fields in fire and gold. "Mom," he said quietly. "Yes, sweetheart? Someday, when you're ready, will you teach me how to take care of it the right way?" I looked at him, the ache in my chest finally easing. "I already am." We stood there in silence, side by side, the wind carrying the smell of soil and memory. I reached up and touched the keys around my neck, the ones that had started all of this, and smiled. Then I took them off and pressed them into his hand. His eyes widened. "Mom, keep them," I said. "You're not ready to use them yet. But when you are, you'll know what they mean." He nodded, eyes shining. "I won't let you down." "I know," I said softly. "You're your father's son." Months later, the ranch thrived again. The fences were fixed, the fields green, the laughter of a son echoing through the valley. Sometimes, when the wind rustled through the trees, I swore I could hear William's voice, proud, content, at peace. The land had survived. The family had too. And as I stood on that porch one last time, watching Daniel ride across the field with the keys glinting at his belt, I finally understood what William meant all those years ago. The keys were never about ownership. They were about trust, the trust to guard what matters most, even when the world tries to take it away. And I had done just that.